The hotel was too quiet for a place that claimed to be fully booked. No voices, no footsteps, only the soft hum of the yellow lights lining the hallway. Ethan checked in at 11:47 p.m. after his car broke down on a rain-soaked highway. The clerk barely looked at him, just slid the key across the counter and said, "4th floor." End of the hall. The hallway on the 4th floor felt longer than it should have been. The carpet was old, stained in places that looked darker than water damage. Doors lined both sides, identical and closed. As Ethan walked, the lights flickered behind him, one by one, as if the hallway were erasing itself. At the very end stood a door. It hadn't been there before. He was sure of it. He would have noticed a door at the end of such a long hall. This one was different. No number. No handle shine, just dull wood and a keyhole that looked deep. Ethan frowned and turned back toward his room. But when he looked again, the door was gone. The next morning, he asked the front desk about it. "There is no room at the end of the hallway," the clerk said calmly. "There never has been." That night, Ethan woke to the sound of something soft dragging across carpet. Slow, deliberate. He opened his door. The hallway lights were dimmer now, and there it was again, the door at the end of the hall, closer this time. As if the hallway itself had shortened. From behind the door came a faint sound, breathing. Ethan tried to tell himself it was exhaustion, stress, imagination. But the breathing stopped the moment he thought that. Then the door creaked open. Inside was a room that looked exactly like his own. Same bed, same lamp. Same chair near the window, except someone was already inside it. The man standing there was Ethan. Same face, same clothes, same terrified eyes. The other Ethan raised a trembling hand and whispered, "Don't come closer. It learns faster when you look at it." The lights went out. When they came back on, the hallway was normal again. No door at the end, just silence. The next morning, guests checked out as usual. The staff cleaned the rooms. One guest never came down. That night, a new door appeared at the end of the hallway. And inside it, something waited, wearing Ethan's face. Practicing his voice, Ethan tried to convince himself that the door had been a trick of exhaustion. The previous night replayed in his mind in fragments. The endless hallway, the flickering lights, the door at the end that vanished when he looked away. By morning, sunlight spilled through the thin curtains of his room, softening everything. The hotel looked ordinary again, harmless. Still, something felt wrong. When Ethan stepped into the hallway, he noticed the carpet first. It was cleaner than he remembered. The dark stains were gone, replaced by a dull, uniform gray. Even the air smelled different, less stale, more like fresh paint. He walked to where the door had appeared. There was nothing there, just a blank wall. Ethan exhaled slowly and laughed under his breath. "You imagined it," he muttered. Stress, lack of sleep, that was all. But as he turned to leave, he noticed something that made his stomach tighten. The lights. They were spaced farther apart than before. The hallway felt longer. That evening, Ethan stayed out as late as he could, wandering the city, delaying the moment he would have to return. When he finally came back, it was close to midnight. The hotel lobby was empty except for the clerk, who was now a different man, older, thin, with deep-set eyes. Ethan hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" he said. The clerk nodded slowly. "Is the 4th floor different?" Ethan asked. "From the others?" The clerk studied him for a moment, then leaned forward slightly. "Some guests notice it sooner than others," he said. Ethan's heart skipped. "Notice what?" "That the building doesn't forget," the clerk replied. Before Ethan could ask anything else, the man straightened up and slid a key card across the counter. "You should get some rest," he said. "The hallway gets curious at night." The elevator ride felt longer than before. When the doors opened onto the 4th floor, the lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. Ethan stepped out. The hallway stretched farther than it had that morning. The walls seemed closer together, the ceiling lower. As he walked, he counted the doors. 1, 2, 3, there were more than before. At the far end, barely visible in the dim light, stood a shape darker than the rest of the corridor. A door. It was closer now, close enough that Ethan could see its surface clearly. The wood looked old, far older than the rest of the hotel. Scratches covered it, uneven and frantic, like claw marks. Ethan felt an irrational pull toward it, as if the hallway itself were gently guiding him forward. Halfway there, he heard something behind him, footsteps. He turned. The hallway was empty. When he faced forward again, the door was open. And inside it, a light was on, warm, familiar, the light from his room. Ethan realized, with a growing sense of dread, that the door wasn't leading to some unknown place. It was leading to him. Ethan froze in front of the door. The warm light spilling from it looked like the soft glow of his own hotel room. But it wasn't. He could see the familiar bed, the small nightstand, the thin curtains over the window. Everything looked identical, except it was wrong. The air around the door was unnaturally still, thick and heavy. He noticed that the shadows cast by the furniture inside shifted subtly, as if they were alive. His chest tightened. Something wasn't just watching him, it was learning. Tentatively, Ethan stepped closer. His reflection appeared in the glass of the nightstand's lamp. For a moment he thought he saw himself blink differently, or maybe his reflection smiled faintly. A chill ran down his spine. He shook his head. No, impossible. Mirrors didn't move independently, yet the reflection did. It leaned slightly forward, a subtle motion that Ethan himself hadn't made. He jumped back. The door creaked behind him. When he turned, the hallway stretched farther than before. The door was still there, closer now, as if the corridor had bent toward him. Ethan tried to rationalize it. "It's a trick of the light, hallucination, jet lag," he muttered to himself. But deep down, he felt something primal stir, a fear that no explanation could touch. Summoning courage, he reached out and opened the door fully. A wave of warmth and familiarity hit him, but it was mixed with something wrongly cold. The room smelled faintly of his own shampoo and soap, yet there was a subtle metallic tang beneath it, like rust or blood. And then he saw it himself, sitting on the bed. Same clothes, same pale skin, same wide, terrified eyes. Only this Ethan moved independently. He didn't mirror Ethan's movements. He raised a trembling hand, pointing toward the door. "Don't come closer," the reflection whispered, voice trembling but eerily familiar. "It learns faster when you watch it." Ethan stumbled back, heart hammering. The door slammed shut behind him with a force that shook the walls. The hallway grew longer, the lights dimmer. Shadows began to creep along the edges, twisting into shapes that seemed to mimic his every movement. Every step he took echoed strangely, doubled, as if the corridor were copying him. Suddenly, the reflection stepped off the bed. It didn't walk, it glided, unnaturally smooth, eyes locked on Ethan. Every instinct in him screamed to run. He stumbled toward the nearest room door, but it had disappeared. The walls were closing in, stretching upward as though the ceiling were trying to crush him. The reflection reached out a hand. Not for menace, at least not exactly, but with an undeniable hunger, like it wanted something Ethan didn't fully understand yet. And then the whispers started, soft, almost inaudible at first. Voices overlapping, low murmurs in the darkness behind him. "Look at it, belong, watch." Ethan realized with terror that the hotel wasn't just a building. It was alive. It fed on attention, on fear, on curiosity. The door, the reflection, the shadows, they were all extensions of it. And once it learned him fully, it would no longer just mimic, it would replace. His knees buckled and he fell backward into the corridor. The door remained open, glowing faintly, inviting, almost seductively. He understood one horrifying truth: the room was patient. It waited for those who dared to watch, and he had already made its notice. Ethan scrambled backward, gasping, heart hammering against his ribs. The corridor seemed to stretch endlessly behind him, but no matter how far he ran, the door at the end stayed in place, glowing faintly. It wasn't just a door anymore. It was a portal, a lure designed to pull him in. He leaned against the wall, trying to catch his breath. The whispers had grown louder now, filling the narrow hallway with a low, insistent murmur. Each voice sounded like someone he had known, speaking secrets only he could recognize. "Look, watch, belong." Summoning a surge of courage, Ethan stepped closer to the door again. The room inside was still identical to his own, but now he noticed tiny details that weren't quite right. The reflection in the lamp wasn't aligned perfectly, shadows bent in impossible ways, and the air seemed to shimmer slightly, as if reality itself had been warped. Then he saw his reflection standing fully by the bed. Not just sitting this time, it had taken on a life of its own. Its eyes gleamed with anticipation. It whispered in that same trembling voice, "Don't step inside. Once you do, you won't be you anymore." Ethan hesitated. Every instinct screamed to obey, but a strange compulsion pulled him forward. He had to know, had to see. With a trembling hand, he pushed the door open fully and stepped into the room. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the air turned icy. A pressure pressed against his chest as if the room itself was inhaling him. The door slammed shut behind him with deafening force. Ethan spun around, but there was no exit. The room had expanded, walls stretching, ceiling lowering, shadows crawling across every surface. He turned back toward the bed and froze. His reflection no longer mirrored him. It was free, walking, circling him, mimicking his movements with eerie precision, but not perfectly. Every gesture was slightly wrong, uncanny, almost cruel. The whispers surged louder, filling the room with voices overlapping, chanting, calling, accusing. Ethan backed away, tripping over the edge of the rug. A cold hand, his reflections, brushed against his shoulder. Panic shot through him. He realized the reflection was testing him, probing for fear, feeding off it, learning him. Every heartbeat, every breath, every instinct it absorbed. The lamp flickered violently, revealing more reflections in the mirror. Dozens of versions of himself, some screaming silently, some twisted in ways that shouldn't exist. They crowded the edges of the room, pressing closer, trying to escape the glass. Ethan's throat went dry. He realized then the horrifying truth. The room didn't just mimic, it captured, it learned, it trapped. One step wrong and the reflection could replace him entirely. It wasn't about violence. It wasn't about a scream. It was about erasure. The whispers intensified into a deafening chorus, echoing in his head. You belong, you will belong, look, watch, become us. Ethan staggered backward toward the only window. Moonlight filtered through, weak and distant, offering a glimpse of reality outside. But the room pulsed, stretching, warping, pulling him inward. The reflection advanced, a predator with a familiar face. He knew he had to act, and act fast, before the room learned him completely. Ethan scrambled backward, gasping, heart hammering against his ribs. The corridor seemed to stretch endlessly behind him. But no matter how far he ran, the door at the end stayed in place, glowing faintly. It wasn't just a door anymore. It was a portal, a lure designed to pull him in. He leaned against the wall, trying to catch his breath. The whispers had grown louder now, filling the narrow hallway with a low, insistent murmur. Each voice sounded like someone he had known, speaking secrets only he could recognize. Look, watch, belong. Summoning a surge of courage, Ethan stepped closer to the door again. The room inside was still identical to his own, but now he noticed tiny details that weren't quite right. The reflection in the lamp wasn't aligned perfectly. Shadows bent in impossible ways, and the air seemed to shimmer slightly, as if reality itself had been warped. Then he saw his reflection standing fully by the bed. Not just sitting this time, it had taken on a life of its own. Its eyes gleamed with anticipation. It whispered in that same trembling voice, "Don't step inside. Once you do, you won't be you anymore." Ethan hesitated. Every instinct screamed to obey, but a strange compulsion pulled him forward. He had to know, had to see. With a trembling hand, he pushed the door open fully and stepped into the room. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the air turned icy. A pressure pressed against his chest as if the room itself was inhaling him. The door slammed shut behind him with deafening force. Ethan spun around, but there was no exit. The room had expanded, walls stretching, ceiling lowering, shadows crawling across every surface. He turned back toward the bed and froze. His reflection no longer mirrored him. It was free, walking, circling him, mimicking his movements with eerie precision, but not perfectly. Every gesture was slightly wrong, uncanny, almost cruel. The whispers surged louder, filling the room with voices overlapping, chanting, calling, accusing. Ethan backed away, tripping over the edge of the rug. A cold hand, his reflections, brushed against his shoulder. Panic shot through him. He realized the reflection was testing him, probing for fear, feeding off it, learning him. Every heartbeat, every breath, every instinct it absorbed. The lamp flickered violently, revealing more reflections in the mirror. Dozens of versions of himself, some screaming silently, some twisted in ways that shouldn't exist. They crowded the edges of the room, pressing closer, trying to escape the glass. Ethan's throat went dry. He realized then the horrifying truth. The room didn't just mimic, it captured, it learned, it trapped. One step wrong and the reflection could replace him entirely. It wasn't about violence. It wasn't about a scream. It was about erasure. The whispers intensified into a deafening chorus, echoing in his head. You belong, you will belong, look, watch, become us. Ethan staggered backward toward the only window. Moonlight filtered through, weak and distant, offering a glimpse of reality outside. But the room pulsed, stretching, warping, pulling him inward. The reflection advanced, a predator with a familiar face. He knew he had to act, and act fast, before the room learned him completely. Ethan's heart raced so violently it felt like it could burst. The reflection in the mirror moved closer, circling him with unnatural grace. Each step it took didn't touch the floor. It floated just above it, gliding as if the room itself carried it. Its eyes were dark, yet glimmered with a cruel intelligence. This wasn't a reflection anymore, it was alive. Ethan backed up toward the far wall, pressing his palms against the wallpaper. The edges of the room shimmered, bending like a mirage. Every door, every piece of furniture subtly changed its position when he blinked. The room was alive, aware, and it had a single purpose, to learn him. The reflection whispered again, voice soft but chilling. You think you are real. But the longer you look, the weaker you become. We only need a moment. Ethan's panic rose. He lunged toward the window, desperate to escape, but it seemed farther than before. The moonlight outside was faint, distant. He could reach it only if he could move faster than the room allowed. Shadows began to creep along the floor, stretching toward him like reaching hands. He stumbled, falling back toward the mirror. The reflection's hand shot out, grabbing him, not physically, but in a way that made his mind scream. Ethan felt his memories flicker, his sense of self wobbling. He caught a glimpse in the glass. Versions of himself, dozens of them, twisting, screaming, fading into shadows. The room pulsed rhythmically like a living heart. The wallpaper bubbled and peeled, revealing faint, scribbled words, names of people, countless people etched into the walls. Some names moved, forming sentences. We watch, we wait, we learn. Ethan scrambled to the bed, grabbing the lamp, swinging it at the reflection. The lamp didn't hit him physically, but the glass shattered in his hand, and the shards flew through the air like slow-motion knives. For a split second, the reflection recoiled, and the whispers grew louder, almost screaming in fury. Breathing heavily, Ethan realized he needed a strategy. The room didn't just trap him, it fed on fear and attention. If he panicked, it would win. If he looked too long, it could replace him entirely. He forced himself to calm his mind, focusing not on fear but on the smallest details, light, edges, distance. The reflection tilted its head, watching him. Its expression was not just malicious, it was curious. Like a predator studying prey, waiting for the exact moment to strike. Ethan knew he had to move carefully, silently, without letting the room anticipate him. The whispers became a chorus, echoing in his skull. You are ours, you belong, just look, just belong. Ethan took a deep breath. He had a plan now. One chance to escape the reflection, the room, and the endless hallway that waited beyond. But one wrong step, and the reflection would step into his life permanently. Ethan's chest heaved as he pressed himself against the far wall, just out of the reflection's immediate reach. His mind raced, trying to make sense of the room, the mirror, the whispers. The air was thick and cold, like the room was breathing around him, alive and patient. He realized the first thing the room did, it learned. Every step, every glance, every flicker of panic was absorbed by the space. It knew his instincts now. He couldn't run blindly, not anymore. Ethan forced himself to calm down and surveyed the room in detail. The bed, the lamp, the curtains, the rug, all arranged identically to his hotel room outside. Yet each detail was slightly off. The edges sharper, shadows darker, reflections delayed by milliseconds. He grabbed a piece of paper from the nightstand, scribbling down the layout in a shaky hand. Every movement, every path, every shadow was a potential trap. The reflection hovered near the bed, its eyes never leaving him. It wasn't attacking, yet. It was studying him, waiting for him to slip, to panic, to become predictable. Ethan knew he needed to make himself unpredictable. Slow, measured movements. Keep the eyes on the reflection, but not locked in fear. The whispers rose again, weaving incoherently around him, but Ethan noticed a pattern. They came stronger when he looked directly at certain corners, walls that seemed harmless at first glance. It wasn't just the mirror. The walls themselves were extensions of the room, subtly shifting, breathing, alive. Ethan's plan formed in his mind. He had to lure the reflection toward one corner while he escaped through the weak moonlight filtering faintly through the small window. He marked the path on the paper. Slow steps, sudden pauses, subtle distractions using broken objects around the room. The lamp, shards of glass, pieces of wallpaper. Every move had to be deliberate. The reflection shifted, sensing the tension, its movements deliberate now, a predator aware of prey's intent. Ethan's stomach churned as he realized, the room didn't just trap you physically, it trapped you mentally. One misstep, one thoughtless glance, and it could consume your identity entirely. He whispered to himself, do not let it learn everything. Do not show fear, do not follow instinct blindly. A sharp scraping sound echoed from behind the mirror. Ethan froze. One of the wall shadows stretched toward him, long, skeletal, almost reaching. He sidestepped silently, noting the extension of the room's influence beyond the mirror. Time became distorted. Minutes stretched like hours. Ethan moved carefully, testing the reflection, gauging its reactions. Each movement was a lesson, each pause a heartbeat closer to survival. The room was alive, yes, but it was also predictable, in a pattern Ethan had to decipher before it learned everything. The plan was simple, terrifying, and dangerous. One precise set of movements leading to the window, a leap toward moonlight, away from the reflection, away from the whispers, away from the endless hallway that wanted to swallow him whole. Ethan took a deep, shuddering breath. He had one shot. One perfectly calculated chance to survive. Ethan moved like a shadow himself, silent and careful, tracing the path he had memorized on the paper. Each step was deliberate, calculated, but the room was watching, learning, adapting. The whispers rose again, overlapping in a chorus of faint, cruel laughter. He passed the bed, keeping his eyes on the reflection. It hovered in place, unnaturally smooth, its head tilted as if mocking him. With every move Ethan made, the reflection mimicked, but always just a fraction slower, a hair off. The room pulsed around him, the walls stretching and contracting, a predator stalking him with perfect precision. Halfway to the window, Ethan froze. A long shadow stretched across the floor, thin, skeletal, crawling like smoke toward his foot. He shifted quickly, heart hammering, narrowly avoiding it. He realized the room wasn't just alive. It extended through every object, every surface. Furniture, shadows, even the carpet seemed to reach for him. The reflection advanced, gliding silently but impossibly fast. Ethan lunged past it, shattering the lamp on the floor. Glass shards scattered, and for a brief second the reflection recoiled as though startled. The whispers surged into a deafening roar, vibrating in his skull. Ethan's hand brushed the cold windowsill. The moonlight outside shimmered, an unreachable promise. He glanced behind, walls twisting, shadows writhing, the reflection gliding closer with terrifying patience. There was no screaming, no sudden attacks, just the relentless approach of something patient, inevitable, and entirely alive. He remembered the paper, the path, the deliberate stops. Pausing mid-step, he feigned panic, letting the reflection learn the wrong rhythm. The room reacted, pulsing, stretching the shadows, almost to trap him. But Ethan slipped past, keeping his body low, moving against instinct. At the last few steps, the reflection's hand shot out, skimming his shoulder. A cold shock surged through his body and his vision blurred. He staggered, nearly falling, but the moonlight was close now. One final leap. Ethan jumped through the window, scraping his arms on the sill. Rain soaked him immediately as he hit the ground, the night air sharp and free. He rolled, panting, adrenaline pumping, staring back. The hotel was still normal, as if it had never tried to kill him, but he knew better. Through the rain, he glimpsed movement at the fourth-floor window. The reflection wasn't there. Yet he could feel it inside the building in the shadows, learning, waiting, patient. It didn't chase him outside. It never needed to. The whispers had stopped for now. Ethan's heart still raced. He pulled his coat tighter, wet and shivering. He glanced back once more. The hallway, the door, the room, it was all gone. But he knew the terrifying truth: the house didn't forget. And one day, it would wait for him to return. Ethan collapsed on the wet pavement outside the hotel, chest heaving, rain pouring down in sheets. His clothes clung to his body, soaked, cold, but he didn't care. For the first time in hours, he dared to hope. He had escaped the fourth floor, the door, the reflection. He had survived. But hope was a fragile illusion. As he staggered away from the hotel, he noticed the lights on the fourth floor flickering again, faintly. At first, he thought it was thunder or a loose bulb, but then he saw it, the window he had jumped from. A shadow lingered there. Not moving, not rushing, just watching. Ethan quickened his pace, ignoring the icy rain slicing his skin. He kept glancing back, heart hammering. Every instinct screamed to run, but another part of him, the logical, rational part, kept telling him, it's just a building, just shadows, just a nightmare. He turned a corner and stopped dead. In the distance, the street lamp flickered. And then he saw it, faint shapes moving in the reflection of the puddles on the pavement. Shadows that mimicked his every step. He froze. The realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. The house didn't need to follow him physically. It was everywhere he looked. The whispers started again, soft at first, almost drowned by the rain. Look, watch, belong, become us. They grew louder, echoing in his skull. Ethan clamped his hands over his ears, but the sound pierced him anyway. The shadows in the puddles twisted, forming his face, smiling, mocking, alive. He ran again, zigzagging through wet streets, past empty shops, neon signs buzzing faintly in the night. Every reflection, every glossy surface seemed to trap him. He caught sight of a shop window, his own reflection inside it, separate from him, staring, grinning. And then the whisper, "You can't hide." Ethan's legs burned, lungs screaming, but he didn't stop. He had to keep moving, had to stay out of the building's grasp. Yet deep down, he knew the terrifying truth. The house wasn't just a location. It was a predator, patient and eternal. It didn't need walls or doors. Once it noticed you, it learned you. Once it learned you, it waited for the perfect moment. Finally, he reached a crowded street under bright, safe lights. People walked past him, oblivious. He tried to convince himself he was safe. He let himself breathe. He had survived. But as he glanced at his phone, a chill ran down his spine. The screen flickered to life on its own. A single image appeared, the hotel's fourth-floor window, and in it, faint but unmistakable, a figure that looked exactly like him. The whispers returned, softer this time, insistent. "We see you, we are patient, we wait." Ethan dropped the phone, his chest heaved. He realized something horrifying. He had escaped the hotel, yes, but the house had followed him. And it would follow him forever. Because some doors, once noticed, never close, Ethan stumbled through the city streets, rain pouring down in sheets, soaking him to the bone. He had run for hours, blindly, not looking back. Every reflection, every puddle, every shiny surface seemed harmless now, or so he thought. He finally reached a small motel far from the highway hotel, thinking he was safe. He checked in, exhausted, and collapsed on the bed. For the first time in days, he dared to close his eyes. But then his phone buzzed. It was on its own. No calls, no notifications, just a glowing screen. He picked it up, trembling. The display showed a live image, his room at the hotel. And standing in the window of the fourth floor, perfectly still, was his own reflection. Ethan's heart froze. He dropped the phone, but it floated in the air, the screen glowing brighter. The reflection moved closer to the window, raising a hand in a mocking wave. And then the whispers started, not distant this time, not faint. They filled the room. "Look, belong, you are ours, we wait, we see, we learn." Ethan tried to run, but the room's air felt heavy, suffocating. He glanced at the mirror in the motel room. At first, his reflection stared back normally. But then it grinned, slightly, just a twitch of the lips, but enough. Enough to let him know that the house, the door, the corridor, the reflection, it hadn't stopped. He stumbled toward the window. Outside, the street lights flickered, and in each reflection he saw himself, not him but a darker, grinning version. The whispers overlapped with laughter now, low and cruel. He realized the horrifying truth. The house didn't need a building to exist. It existed wherever he went, in every surface that reflected light. It had learned him completely. Ethan dropped to his knees. The phone floated toward him, screen still glowing, and he could hear a single whisper repeating. "We are patient, we are endless, we wait." Trembling, he forced himself to look at the mirror one last time. His reflection moved independently, eyes wide with a cruel, knowing intelligence. It mimicked him, but not perfectly. It had learned to be better, smarter, more patient. Ethan's mind screamed, trying to separate reality from illusion. But there was no escape. The whispers became his heartbeat, his breath, his shadow. He had survived the hotel, but the hotel had survived him. And somewhere in every reflection, in every glass, in every shadow cast by a street lamp, he felt it watching, waiting. Always patient, always learning. Because some doors, once opened, never truly close. The whispers would never end. Weeks had passed since Ethan fled the hotel, yet the nights had grown longer, darker, and colder. He had tried to convince himself that the nightmare ended the moment he jumped from the window, but deep down he knew better. Some horrors don't end, they follow. Ethan moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. Lights were on timers, windows sealed, mirrors covered. He tried to create a safe zone, a bubble of normalcy, but nothing could erase the echo of the whispers. Every time he closed his eyes, he could hear them faintly, whispering from the corners, from inside his skull. "We wait, we see, we learn." Even the simplest reflections betrayed him. A spoon glinting in the kitchen, the shiny surface of a coffee table, the glow of his phone's screen. He could feel them watching. Sometimes his own reflection moved before he did, just slightly. A twitch of the lips, a narrowing of the eyes, a subtle tilt of the head. Sleep became a battlefield. Every night he dreamt of the hallway, the door, the mirror. Sometimes he walked endlessly, counting doors that weren't there, feeling shadows wrap around his ankles. He would wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, the whispers lingering even after his eyes opened. Ethan's friends noticed the change in him. He became quiet, paranoid, always checking reflections, avoiding bright lights, refusing mirrors. He told them he had nightmares, but not the truth. How could he explain that a building, a reflection, a hallway could learn a person? That it could follow him even when it didn't exist physically? One evening, as he sat on the couch, his phone lit up on its own. A single message appeared, no sender, just a photo. The hotel hallway dimly lit, empty, except for the far end where a faint shadow waited. A hand waved. It looked like him. Ethan's stomach dropped. He dropped the phone, but the glow lingered in the room, reflecting off the windows, off the shiny surfaces. He could hear whispers forming into words he understood perfectly. "You cannot escape. You belong now." Panic surged, yet he forced himself to breathe. Rational thought told him it was impossible, that it couldn't follow him across cities, across realities. But instinct screamed otherwise. He looked at the mirror in the hallway, just a small one by the coat rack, and froze. His reflection blinked first. He realized the horrifying truth: he wasn't safe anywhere. The house, the hallway, the reflections, they were no longer just part of a building. They had learned him, copied him, and claimed a piece of his mind. Every shadow, every surface, every reflective object could now be a gateway. Ethan sank to the floor, shaking, realizing that survival wasn't freedom. It was adaptation, living under constant vigilance. And yet the whispers never stopped. "We see you, we wait, we belong, and so do you." Outside, the city lights flickered. Inside, shadows lengthened, reaching toward him. Ethan understood with the last shred of clarity that some doors once noticed never close. Some houses never let go.